whenever you are building a startup, an essential part is bringing the right team together. I've seen a bunch of my friends where it was like one founder being like the guy and everyone else being sidekicks. It usually doesn't work.
Mhm.
Like, not even Steve Jobs did this. He also had a strong team. So generally, it's always important to be on the lookout for the top talent and to see out of the people that I actually know in my network who would be a good fit for a given stage. You always got to be careful about what the talent is and also what stage you're at, because you can't always pay top money, and maybe that there's people that would be good but at a slightly later stage.
And if you want to know how some of the most innovative European startup founders are scaling their business, then this is the show for you. Today, my guest is Marin Smiljanic. And for those who don't know you, Marin, who are you and why should people listen to you?
Hey, Eric. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on today. And a big shout out to all your listeners and viewers. Like you said, I'm Marin. I'm the co founder and CEO of OmniSearch, which is building the next generation of search technology. So essentially, whether you're trying to find information inside anything from videos to images to audio content to documents, literally anything, even the stuff that's not just plain text or HTML or other such formats. So we basically allow you to find information in a super efficient sort of way within any type of content that you have, either you or your organization.
Okay. Now, Marin, for somebody like me, I use Google. I think Google is pretty fast. Maybe it's slow for some people, but I find that, hey, it does the job. Or if I'm looking for something on my MacBook, I just go to Finder and I do a search for it. And I know you said that you can find anything other than just text-based documents, but why would myself or somebody like me want to consider using OmniSearch.ai?
Okay, so this is actually where I try to paint the picture that we're not actually doing the essentially suicidal thing of taking on Google heads on. So the main difference I would say is that you've got with OmniSearch, it is primarily geared towards companies and to business users. And so it's not the kind of B2C web search engine that indexes everything like all the open content. It essentially tries to index everything that's behind either a paywall or within a company's intranet or stuff like this sort. So it's more of an enterprise solution and more of an API that allows you to build your own products with search.
Got it. Got it. So can you share some success stories where OmniSearch really improved the efficiency for some of the brands that you're working with?
Yeah, totally. I think that there's a couple that we can always talk about, companies such as OmniPro or Underline Science. So generally what we've been most successful at up until this point is companies that just have a big library of multimedia content. And they want to expose this in some efficient way to their own end users. And so what they'll usually do is they'll be using these industry standard solutions, so to speak, like Elastic or Algolia or such vendors. And usually what the problem is that they'll run into is that can only search textual content. It is primarily a text search solution. So they can search titles, they can search metadata, stuff of this sort, descriptions, but they can't really search the content itself. With us, if they index everything with us and they power the search functionality through OmniSearch, then you can type something in, their own end users can type something in and navigate straight to a point in video where that question is answered, or something that appears in a video, something that shows up somewhere on slides. So it's a far richer way to search content and retrieve information, far richer and far more efficient.
Okay. I noticed that Thinkific, I think it's one of your partners. I saw them on your
Mhm.
website. I know what that platform is. For those who don't know, creators that are hosting sorts of like online classes, maybe digital products or something of that sort, they can use Thinkific to run their online classes or digital products. So if I were to have this like video series on Thinkific, would I still need to use some sort of naming convention for when I'm naming the video or tagging it with different tags in order to be able to use your tool, or I don't
I'm
have to do
actually
that?
happy that you brought up Thinkific because that brings up a whole lot of warm memories, and I think you guys were involved with that ecosystem too at some point. I think that might be the first time I heard about Bonjoro.
Yeah, that's right. We're
So
going back in
yes,
time here. Yeah.
way back in time, yes. So this was actually our first way of that we got traction. So for Thinkific specifically, no, you don't need to have any kind of a convention there. We just built an integration with the Thinkific API, so we can index this completely out of the box. Like it's a 1 minute install, and you'll get this stuff right off the bat.
Okay. Okay. No, but from a user perspective, though, you're saying that if I'm in the Thinkific platform and I want to use your tool, OmniSearch, I just go in their integration library and download it
Absolutely.
right there. Okay.
Absolutely. You've got a pretty, and you know this, Thinkific has a pretty good App Store experience, just like Shopify does. And essentially, you just click there, you install it, you create your account, and you start the indexing process.
All right. All right. Okay. It
Yeah.
sounds pretty easy. Sounds pretty easy. Now, when did you get this idea to launch the company and how old were you?
I think probably 28. So a couple of years, 3 years ago, something like this.
Okay.
And I think the idea, a little bit of my background, before jumping into the startup world, I spent 3 years at Amazon.
Mhm.
So on AWS and the Alexa teams. And the problem that we encountered there is both of these teams were fairly technically complex. There was a lot of facts that you needed to know, a lot of algorithmic stuff that you needed to wrap your head around. And Amazon had a very extensive library of internal video content. These would be taped video lectures of people explaining these fairly complex concepts on the whiteboard, talking a lot about it, hour-long videos and hundreds of them, not
Yeah.
if not thousands.
Yeah.
And the problem was that if you were looking for information inside that, you couldn't get past the title or the metadata searches. And so that was the spark that lit it. If only I could ask a question and get that little snippet of information as well as the point in the video where that is actually corroborated. So
Got it.
that got it there.
Yeah. So I love it. You saw the problem in your own current in
Yeah.
your own currently job, and you're like, I can go solve this on my own. So were you building this at night? Like, this was like a side project during the weekends?
No, actually, so believe it or not, there was also another startup in between. So I figured that at a certain point, and I had been at Amazon for about 3 years, I figured it was a good time to start doing something else and to give it a shot because at that point it was looking like the so I one of the fun facts is that I actually got my promotion right before that and got one paycheck at the higher salary range and then quit. But it was and I loved my boss and everything, but it was just a good time to take that leap of faith and just continue doing products and building products on my own.
Yeah, I've read a lot of things about meetings at Amazon or AWS, and I don't know if they're true or not, but when you went to a meeting, was there any sort of structure to it that was very different than other companies that you
I think
you imagine?
it depends. The meetings that are very well run at Amazon, those are very different. I'm sure that you're probably alluding to the fact that you need to come prepared with documents. And then the first, I don't know, 15 minutes or 20 minutes of the meeting, these people just reading the documents so that they're all on the same page and then they can, continue the discussion. If they're well run, that has been my experience, yes. And those are pretty efficient meetings. There were also a lot of meetings that are just ritual meetings. You need to hold them because the higher up says so. But hey, how's everyone doing? What's going on?
Yeah. How was your weekend? Okay, so let's get back to OmniSearch here. What were some of the things that you did to get traction, like getting your first users?
Thinkific was definitely the first one. That's another fun fact. That was the first way in which we got paying customers. And this goes back to a Vancouver connection. So we were talking to an investor who was also an investor in Thinkific. And so he told us that Thinkific was at that point just launching the App Store and opening up their API for developers to be able to develop
Hmm.
apps for the ecosystem.
Yep.
And so we got then connected to the people who were in charge of that program. They gave us the APIs and the API docs, and we developed the app and launched it. So for a fairly long time, most of our income was actually from the Thinkific ecosystem.
All right, folks, time for a quick break here. Having worked as a marketer for many, many years, I've come to the conclusion that the right tool can be a game changer. That's why I'm excited to talk to you about Leadfeeder, a tool that helps you cut through the data and turn those website visitors into solid leads. Leadfeeder shows you which companies are checking out your site, tracking their behavior, and integrates all this with your CRM. Result? your secret weapon for targeted lead engagement and making it easier for your team to convert website traffic into sales. Head to leadfeeder.com and get a free trial today. You can also get an extended premium free trial when you let them know you heard about Leadfeeder through the B2B Marketers Can Laugh podcast. Okay, back to the show. Here's a good one for you, Marin. Imagine a potential client saying, "Hey, I'm really sensitive about data privacy." Is OmniChurch still a good option for us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like you would be surprised how prevalent this is nowadays. Like how many, now that we're actually talking on a regular basis to bigger enterprises, how many of them just hate this concept of shipping all their data to OpenAI or something like this. So it's very prevalent with all these AI startups today. I use the quotation marks intentionally to just hack a whole lot of APIs together, and that's the product. We have a self-contained system, so it can be deployed to anywhere. We like to deploy it as a SaaS if there's companies that aren't as sensitive to privacy, but for the ones that are, you can always deploy it on the servers. And so that I think really differentiates us, that and the way that it is performant. So we don't kill your entire hardware infrastructure with very heavy models. Rather, it's all fairly light and fairly quick.
Okay. Where are you at today, and what are you excited about in the next 12 months for OmniSearch?
So I think that one of the nicest things is that we finally have two verticals that we're really successful in, meaning online education and the media industry. And so these two, actually, I have to say that I'm a little proud of making that prediction even in the very first days of the company, that these two were going to be the first big successes. And so we've finally started closing some really good enterprise customers. We're currently piloting with a Fortune 500 company or at least S&P 500. I don't even know the distinctions, but in the US. So we're definitely going up market in that sense.
Yeah.
And that's been a very nice development in the past I would say in the past year.
Okay.
And I'm excited about, I think that I'm excited about us doing a whole lot of good R&D and good engineering work to bring the models even further down in size and make them more efficient, more accurate, and just building out the team a bit more.
Yeah. What's been the biggest struggle for you since leaving AWS and running your own startup?
I think that the main thing is like you have your skill set and your focus when you're doing big tech engineering work rather than engineering work in general is that your focus is fairly narrow. Like your context is, your team and your sub part of the product. And that's the main thing that you're focused on. And you're focused on that. It's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, maybe 6, whatever. But I think that when you get into the entrepreneurial route, you will definitely need to master a whole lot of skills. You need to do sales. You need to do marketing. You need to deal with investors. You need to actually make sure the product gets built. You need to write some code yourself. You need to make sure you're on top of everything else that's going on in the industry, so forth. So it's a far wider variety of things you actually need to be good.
How did you get a grasp on the weaknesses that you have running the startup? And were there some things that you were completely blindsided by, or did you know beforehand that, hey, if this thing is successful, I'm going to have to hire this person to do that part of the job because I'm just not very good at it, or I don't want to do that?
I think generally you always like whenever you are building a startup, an essential part is bringing the right team together. I've seen a bunch of my friends where it was like one founder being like the guy and everyone else being sidekicks. It usually doesn't work. Like not even Steve Jobs did this. He also had a strong team. So generally, it's always important to be on the lookout for the top talent and to see out of the people that I actually know in my network who would be a good fit for a given stage. You always got to be careful about what the talent is and also what stage you're at, because you can't always pay top money. And maybe that there's people that would be good, but at a slightly later stage. You see this with engineering all the time. So there's people that are really good engineers, but maybe they work better on bigger systems or once you have some sort of a structure in place. Whereas in the very beginnings, you need hackers, generalists, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. It's been one of the main key things that you've had your team focus on as it relates to making sure we're delivering a good product.
Actually, our test coverage is very good. I think that that's been essential because, and I've done a fair bit of infrastructure development even before I was at Amazon. I was at a company called MemSQL, or nowadays Single Store. So that's a database company that ended up being a unicorn. Also, I was on S3. And now our thing is fairly heavy, like infrastructure heavy. In all these places, you got to have good quality assurance, and you need to make sure that once something gets shipped, it is covered, and that once you run the tests, you actually know that this works, that it doesn't have egregious bugs or even smaller bugs. So I think that was an important investment, and I think that was a total team effort. I think other than that, it's mostly just listening to customers and shipping what the industry actually needs rather than Hail Mary features.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more. Do you have somebody on the team that's their main responsibility is
It's primarily
customer?
me.
It's primarily you.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about that. What are you doing?
I think basically the main thing is I talk to customers. That's, I think, my most important job at this point. I gather some sort of requirement lists from them, and then we do a fair bit of triaging and saying, okay, what's the effort required for each of these, and how important and how generalizable do we actually think they are? If we ship it for this customer, how many other customers will we be able to ship it to? What TAM can we address with? From that point on, yeah, we've got a fairly good big engineering team at this point, which is 6 people. Not big, still small, but definitely better than when it was just me and my co-founder coding in essentially a garage. And so then they prioritize among themselves and we ship.
Yeah. How does your team look right now? Is it entirely remote or is there a few like in one location?
So the engineering team is in Zagreb, yes. And then parts of the business team are in the US. So I think I'm always partial to hiring salespeople in the US.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So last question before we get into the fun facts question here. What are you excited about in the next 12 months? I think you spoke a little bit about that, but is there like anything on the roadmap or any
Mm-hmm.
sort of expansion strategies that you've got going on?
So I think that the main things from a product perspective are going to be to really make the video searches good and efficient and make them so that they're easily deployable to data sets of any size. This is a holy grail. A whole lot of people claim that they can do it. I don't think that anyone has ever managed to do it at scale because processing video is just very compute intensive. And so we're investing a lot into models for people, detecting logos, detecting objects, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so in the next year, this is going to be crucial to get those two into a stage where if you've got exabytes of data, you could be able to find the information within that data set.
What do you think some of the tools out there that are on the market, like for podcasters? Because I've used Riverside, and Riverside
Mm-hmm.
has this new functionality where it automatically pulls clips that you can post on
Mm-hmm.
social media. I'm not sure what it's using, but there's other tools out there like Opus claims
Mm-hmm.
to do the same thing. You upload a video and it'll pull like maybe 10 different clips that you can use for YouTube Shorts
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. Are they using just something that's off the shelf that they're plugging in, or are they building these internally?
I doubt that they're building all of that internally. I would imagine like they'd dump it into a transcript and then dump the transcript into GPT or something like this and say, get me some clips. Because with a podcast, again, like you're not working a whole lot on the video part. You're primarily working on the spoken part.
Okay. All right. Now it's time for the fast questions
Rapid
here.
fire.
Rapid
Yeah.
fire. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of stock options and bonuses for new hires, you now give them what?
Pinball machines and Xboxes.
I love it, man. That's a good one. That's a good one. Blank is a contest or game that I have won. You have won.
Risk or Monopoly.
Okay. Yeah, I like Monopoly too. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Craziest thing you ever did to make money or save money?
I would say buying very cheap food. That was about the time I was doing the first startup. I think that I would, yeah, just take some cereals and then eat one meal somewhere outside, like some ramen. They always say ramen profitability.
Yeah. Yeah. No, ramen is good, man. You throw an egg in there, you got like a gourmet
You
meal
got
right
you
there.
you got a good meal. You got a good meal.
Okay. Last question for you. Okay. Speaking of food, blank is a food that my partner or somebody close to me enjoys, but I really hate it?
Anything that has to do with cauliflower, man, I don't dig cauliflower. I don't dig cauliflower. They try to sell it to me like something that is both healthy and
Yeah.
delish.
Yeah.
I was never sold on cauliflower.
Okay. Here's the key. Here's the key with cauliflower.
No, you got
Here's the secret: maple syrup. And you can get plenty of that
Oh,
in
really?
Canada. Yeah.
You can get plenty of that. So
Sprinkle
do you fry it? What do you do?
after you bake it or fry the cauliflower, just sprinkle a little bit of some drops of maple syrup all around. And so it's got that little sweetness factor. That's the key right there.
All right. We give it a
Yeah.
shot. Okay, fine. This motivates me to reevaluate. I'm not,
Yeah.
closed-minded.
Yeah. Hey, this is not just a podcast. This is also tips on making your diet a little bit better.
Good. I'll give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Marin, thanks for coming on the show. People listening, I'm going to put links to Marin's LinkedIn profile as well as the OmniSearch website.
OmniShirt, that's what our shirts are called.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Marin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. For those listening, you enjoyed this. This show is not free. In fact, I'd appreciate it if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening to it on Spotify or Apple. And until next week, this is Eric signing off, and I'll be back next week with another exciting European startup founder or marketer. Cheers.